Good morning. As you can see, I'm Andy's sucker of the week. He actually asked me to speak probably a little bit over a month ago, I think, and I successfully avoided it for several weeks. In fact, Brian came and asked my wife, Casey, to speak in the intersection service, and so she did that, and I thought, okay, surely this absolves me of any responsibility to have to speak in front of everyone, because if you know Casey, she's more than capable of being the spokesperson, being the mouthpiece, the one making her opinion known. So, I thought, okay, they've heard from Casey. There's no way we want to hear from the lesser farmer, so I don't have to do it. But no, Andy persisted. So he texted me last week and asked if I could still do this. And so I went back actually and watched Jennifer Bird's speech from a couple weeks ago to hype myself up, because I was, I didn't want to do it, right? Like her, I feel very uncomfortable speaking in public. But I had this kind of feeling in the pit of my stomach, this guilt for wanting to say no. So I watched her speech and kind of hyped myself up and told him I would do it. So I relented. So like everyone else, he asked me to speak about why I'm faithful to this church. So I was sitting there trying to think of reasons, and probably like most of you, the first thing that came to mind was my family. So I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, James and Alice, and the two of them absolutely love this church. They're probably the most faithful people in the church, right? They love being here. Alice is the highlight of her week each week is Wednesday Night Live. In fact, she asks about it, Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays. It doesn't really matter. She's asking, can we go to Wednesday Night Live? And she's always disappointed because the answer is no unless it's Wednesday. But she's just dying to get into that gym, visit with Ann Travis and Allegra, her best friends, to go, visit with Alan, or as she knows him, the ice cream man, and just, fill herself up with desserts, really not ever eat dinner. She's dying to go see Miss Dot in the nursery. So believe me when I tell you, it's the highlight of her week for sure. And then James, my 6-year-old, I don't think there's ever been a day where he's left church and he's not been drenched in sweat from playing kickball or snag with his buddies. So for both of my kids, their best friends are the friends that they've made in this church. That really means a lot to me, and it's really not just the kids either, right? So just the adults who volunteer, in the children's ministry, in the music ministry, in Sunday school, and the wisdom and the lessons they impart on my kids is really meaningful for us as well. So, in fact, just I think a week or two ago, we were asking James what he learned in Sunday school, and he kind of exasperatedly said, "Oh, we learned about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego again." It's really just the same story as Daniel in the lion's den. So he's giving me the literary parallels between those two. So according to him, it's the exact same story, and they're just switching out the characters. And so apparently there was a big writer's strike going on at that time when Daniel was writing the book, and they had to recycle some material. But so it's the people, right? So it's the kids, the friends that they've made, the adults that they're learning from, that are making a huge difference in the way they're experiencing life. And that reason alone, I think, is enough to make me want to come give my time to this church and make sure it's everything it can be. But beyond that, a big reason that I'm faithful is I just see that there's a need, right? So when there's a need, I feel like someone has to step up and kind of fill that need, and I'm happy to do that. Sometimes it's inconvenient, sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but I think the church cannot be successful if the congregation, if you guys are not willing to, make yourselves uncomfortable, to, inconvenience yourselves and kind of put in the time to make the church everything it can be. I think God demands that of us, right? To find the time to volunteer at the church, to spend time with the church, to get to know your fellow congregation. When Andy's asking for volunteers and you're like me and you start thinking, I do not want to do that, that sounds terrible, but then you feel that guilt in your stomach. I think that guilt is God sort of calling you to kind of, pull you deeper into the community, and I think you have to answer that call. I think that's a commitment that we all made, right? Our vows say we have to faithfully participate in the church through our presence and our gifts and our service. And I don't think there's ever been a time in this church's history when we've needed, where it's needed you more. So I think it's important that we all show up and be present, that we share our gifts with the church, and that we volunteer wherever we can. So go talk to John Frazier about helping out at Wednesday Night Live. Talk to Jennifer Landers about volunteering for Birthday Gift for Christ. Drew Howard about the Honduras mission. Talk to Laura Rivera about how you can help corral small children in the children's ministry, or talk to Andy or Brian, or go to this missions fair and try to find your way to use your gifts and contribute. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I stand in front of you as proof that God does have a sense of humor. When I was a teacher, one of the things I told my student teachers was when they came to see us was when they were watching me that they ought to be thinking about, man, when I get the chance to stand up in front of the band, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. And we've had some excellent speakers during this stewardship time, and dummy me, I was sitting up there thinking to myself, man, if I ever got the chance to do that, I'm going to da-da-da-da-da. I didn't say it out loud, but God actually heard it, and he said, yo, big boy, we're about to find out about it. And I don't know if I should have my feelings hurt or not. Zach this morning said that you asked him a month ago. Yeah. And I got an invitation this Wednesday, so I don't know if I really ought to have my feelings hurt about this or not. This started out at half an hour, Andy. Keith's got his watch on. He's going to let me know when I get to 20 minutes. So when we moved to Ridgeland from Quitman in the summer of 2002, we were lucky because we already had friends here in Madison County. Some of those friends were Frank and Patty Bonner. I grew up with them in Starkville, and they were and are still members through the internet. Hey, Frank and Patty. And they suggested that we come here and check it out. Scott and Sandy Maynard were also friends from Starkville, known them my entire life, and they brought the Created by God classes that we had here, and they taught them for a couple of years here. They recommended that we came here. Keith had the misfortune of working with me at Ridgeland, and he also suggested that we come. And we looked at a couple of different churches, and we finally came here to St. Matthew's. The choir was my primary concern. It was excellent, but let me tell you what, that dude, Steve Castile, that boy could talk, and I was super impressed with him. Then we went to Wednesday Night Live. We wandered in. We looked lost because we were lost, but within seconds, who could find us but Rayford Woodrick? Was there a better person ever to find us? And the cool thing about it was that I didn't even know. He knew my parents through the connection of band. Instant connection, instant home. During that whole time, somewhere along the way, I think I emailed Tim about our being interested in coming and sing, or maybe I said something to Keith about warn Tim we want to come and sing. Or knowing me, I dreamed that I actually warned somebody that we were going to show up and try to sing on a Wednesday night. So we bopped into choir, and choir had already started, and we stood there, and Tim looked over at us and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, in my typical dorky fashion, "We're here!" And he said, "Okay, who are you?" In typical Tim fashion, Grace kicked in a hurry. He grabbed his shuttle to see and got us hooked up with all the books, and that was the last time that we looked for a church in Madison County. Cadden and Jace, our two boys, were 1 and 3 when we moved in here, and they were like raising bear cubs. And Dot and the ladies in the back took tremendous care of them. And I know that Wednesday nights got really long while Mom and Dad sang, but we are forever grateful for the impact and for their grace of time and energy with our guys while Mom and Dad got to do the thing that they did, serving and loving to sing in our church. We joined a Sunday school class pretty quickly after that. We made lifelong friends, friends that we still have today. More connections were made. As we made all these connections, there was a distinct feeling that St. Matthew's was a place where all are welcomed. There was a feeling of non-judgmental grace. There was a feeling of being in service. There was a feeling of purpose with the missions that go on. The South American missions, the missions to Forest, Birthday Gift for Christ, Christ Covered, the tremendous work that Kay did with Congregational Chair, and with the leadership of Steve Castile, this place became home to us. As I mentioned, our boys, Jason Cadden, were raised in this church. Nothing was more important than the impact of this church on our guys. They were given a foundation that they've taken to this day and made Mom and Dad pretty proud of the people that they've become. There were some interesting moments along the way. There was that time in Wednesday Night Live where Mom and Dad turned their back on them, and they decided that was the time that they were going to go walk around Wednesday Night Live and solicit funds for a fence to go up in our backyard so that they could get a beagle that Mom and Dad said that we couldn't get because Mom and Dad weren't building the fence, but they were going to go raise the money for the fence. There was that. And then there was the time that the cherub choir was singing up here, and Jace decided that he was hot, and he was going to express that loudly for everyone and try to take his shirt off in the middle of a cherub choir performance right before the children's choir. You didn't kick us out. You showed us grace for that moment. And you also gave us the chance to sit in the office with Kim Parker while they professed their Christian faith. Gets me now. Few things have moved me more. My mother used to come and hear our choir programs, and you were always incredibly generous with her, even when she sat in your chair. She loved coming to hear us, and when my mom died, you were there for us. When we moved to Florida and Amy's dad died, even though we were still in Florida, you were there for us. You set a standard that other churches couldn't meet. When we were in Florida for those 7 years, we never found a church that we could stick with. And not because they were bad people, but because you set a standard, and we wanted every place to be St. Matthew's. There was no other Tim Rigby. There was no other St. Matthew's. And when Amy said I could finally quit, not have to teach anymore, we flirted with going to Oxford. That lasted about 10 minutes because we knew where we were coming. We were coming back home. And we came back home just in time for COVID. What a tremendous time, right? But we really could never have had a better place for this. During that time of COVID, Andy and Tim and the staff here did incredible work to keep us all connected. And you got to know, that didn't happen everywhere, but it happened here. It happened in this home. And now we find ourselves in another unique time. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but we've kind of been through a little tumultuous time here recently. And that's left us with some holes. But we stayed. Those of us in this room, those of us on the internet, we stayed. This place was important to us. This place is our home. We stayed, and we have the opportunity, after we've gotten finished with all that other garbage, to go back and to be who we say we are. We get to be the place of grace. We get to be the place of welcoming. We get to be the place that loves each other. We all recognize we're on the road. We all recognize we're on the road to the same place. My road may look a little different than your road. My stops may be a little bit different than your stops, but we're all headed to the same place, and I love the grace of this room that allows us to do that. We also have this time where it's time to step up. With those that left, there are some holes. To be sure, there's a financial hole, and it's notable. If you haven't made a financial commitment before, let me encourage you to make one. If you have made one, then maybe there's a little bit more you can do. As a popular podcast that Andy and I both listen to says, the answer to all your questions is money. And to be sure, that's true. But there are 1,000 other places where you can plug in too, as you can see in Hart Hall. You'll note that our choir is a little smaller than it was a couple of months ago. It's crazy for me to say because I was afraid to sing growing up. I didn't do it. I was a drummer. Drummers did not sing. Don't tell me about Don Henley singing Hotel California. I was a drummer, and drummers didn't sing.
You strike me more as a Karen Carpenter sort.
Well, okay, Karen Carpenter. I didn't know that stuff. I was a hard-headed drummer from Starkville, Mississippi, and I didn't sing. And to compound that, the last 2 classes I took in college were speech and voice. Ron Vernon said, Jay, if you don't take these 2, you ain't going to graduate. I finally gave up and took those last 2 classes the last possible time that I could. It's really ironic because I'm standing up in front of you here talking to you with a choir robe on. Choir became the thing that brought me into a church and kept me into a church, and it's my way of being, this is my service to the church. Our choir has gotten a little bit smaller. If you've ever had an inclination, the slightest inclination of singing, man, we'd love to have you. There's not an audition. You don't have to pay a fee. We won't make you sing a solo. We just want you to come in the room with us. There's nobody like Tim Rigby. Nobody. And the people in the room also are pretty okay also. We'd love to have you if you thought about being in choir. There are 1,000 other things that go on around here too. Our children's choir, they need people also. You don't have to sing. You don't have to dance. Those things certainly help. But if you just want to come and help them be with the children's choir, that's a thing. Some of the most important things happen in this church are our children's Sunday school classes. They need teachers, and they really need enough teachers, so there's a rotation. That's there for you. Our youth at this point are facing incredible, inexcusable pressure from outside. It's inexcusable. And if you're watching me, I'm telling you, and it's inexcusable. They need you. And you don't have to go in and do anything other than to let them know you're in the room, but you need it. You're needed in 1,000 different places in here. We have people needs for leadership. We have needs for participants. Now's the time. Now's the time for us to live into this opportunity. There's some holes, but we're here. We kept this church going, and we're going to keep it going, and it's going to take us to make it go. Live into that. Let's show the world what God means to us. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Baily May, for those who don't know me. So Brian asked me to come and talk about why not just me, but my wife Meredith and I give to St. Matthew's and do things here at St. Matthew's. So the first and foremost thing that motivated us was when we moved back. I'm from here, but we moved back. I'd lived in Starkville for many years. Moved back here 6 years ago, looking for a place to go to church, and my brother was already going here. He said, come in here. And we walked in, and from day one, for the first time we walked, I remember we went to traditional service, and it was as though we had been coming here our whole lives. And so we never even went anywhere else. We just visited here because everybody just made us feel like we wanted to be here. It was great. And in those ensuing years, we've kind of continued to feel that. We've been shown an enormous amount of love and grace since we have been here, and we have seen the people that are here treat the others who come here with the same kind of love and grace that they treated us with. And it doesn't matter what folks look like, where folks came from. If you come here, we treat people well. We treat people in the way that Christ would have us to treat them. We certainly try. And so the more time you spend, around, the more likely you are to get asked to do something. And especially when you're somebody like me, who I make a lot of noise. And so when you make a lot of noise, you draw a lot of attention. When you draw a lot of attention, people ask you to do stuff. And I ended up, I don't know how, helping out with our students, our youth group, and had a group of guys. They were, Carter, when did I start with you guys? Like 9th grade or something? Oh, 7th grade. And now they're juniors in high school. And they just asked me to just show up and just like sit there. And I've grown to get to know these guys now over the years, and become extremely fond of them, and they're my friends. But the biggest thing that they do for me is it's not like, what can I do for you, but it's what they do for me. I have accountability. They should give me accountability, if nothing else, right? So if I know that on Wednesdays and Sundays I'm going to see these guys, and if there's like a picture of me acting foolishly or doing something, that might not be a very wise choice, they're going to find out. They're not stupid. And so if nothing else, there's accountability there, and that's amazing. The other thing, I sing in the choir, and man, that's fun. If anybody, speaking of which, not to steal any of your folks, Brian, but if anybody has like even the slightest inkling of like carrying a tune, even thinking about it, we need some folks. We're getting a little slim over there, so talk to Tim. He's amazing. Tim's great, and the rest of us are okay. But at the end of the day, right, we're called to serve. We're called, those of us who love and serve God are called to serve and love one another, and we are called to first and foremost love our God, and second only unto that is to love our neighbor. And so in serving, that's how I am able to love my neighbor. But in doing so, I feel like I am blessed much more than I am doing any blessing because of it. So I would encourage everybody, it may seem like a lot, it may seem like work, but as soon as you start, and as soon as you're there and you're doing it, it goes by, and it feels like you go home and you go, man, I've never felt more spiritually satiated than I have here at St. Matthew's. And so if anybody has any questions about like what you can do, all these things back there behind you in the room behind us, a great way to start. But reach out and do what you can, because I assure you, I promise you, what you will receive in spiritual satisfaction, in grace, in love, will be tenfold what you feel like you've given. And I'm sorry I was late. I'm singing in the choir. Blame Tim.